What inspired you to, I've got a story. I think people are going to like it, so I'm going to put it down on paper and go through basically the humiliating process of publishing a book. Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Hines for Encounters USA. We are your one-stop podcast and YouTube channel for all things alien, Bigfoot, and Dogman. So relax, kick up your feet, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another fantastic twofer. We have a special Books in Hindsight and Encounters USA podcast for you, and we have a very special guest. We have author Jack LaFountain. So let's start off by saying, hey, Jack, welcome to Encounters USA and Books in Hindsight.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. So, Jack, let me just explain, kind of why we were interested in having you on the podcast. Your book Tracks really looks right up our alley for what we are going into as far as our area of research. And that area of research is the Hood Canal and Lake Cushman area. Now, your book you talk about the Potlatch area.
Yes. The book is 4 stories, one for each season of the year. Mm-hmm. And the first story in the book, the summertime story, centers around Hoodsport, Potlatch area, Suquamish River.
Okay. And that's really what we're interested in. The book has a number of great stories, and we're going to go into the all of the writing aspects as far as the book goes, the writing process. But for our Encounters USA side of the podcast, what we want to really narrow down is your interest in the Potlatch Hood Canal area, what tied you to it. And really, we just want to get into the stories because we haven't really had a lot of Native American input as far as Bigfoot. Jack, let's start off by talking about your background first. What got you into writing?
Well, I got into writing. I've kind of always been a storyteller. My mom used to say, "You got to quit that lying." Now I call it fiction, but it's I have always been into storytelling about as long as I can remember, and I began actually writing things that I was going to let people read about 2000 or so. And the first book I did came out of like 2005.
Okay. And was that, did you get tied into a specific genre then, or?
Actually, I write mostly paranormal and supernatural fiction, Bigfoot, all kinds of cryptids. I love werewolves and those stories, a lot of ghosts. The last couple of years, I've kind of been all over the place. I've got one sort of a gothic paranormal romance that is with the publishers now. I've got a young adult fantasy book with them. In January, I did a Western. So, but yeah, I always like to come back to the paranormal and supernatural. That's my favorite place to be.
Now that's a very interesting aspect of your writing is, I am guilty of the same thing of not sticking to a genre. And I don't know if that's such a great idea. Do you find that it, as a writer, expanding into different genres, does that help or does that hurt your fan base?
I think it helps. Because it kind of makes me research into different areas. but it's good to make a break and do something different for a while. I actually got into doing the Western. I wrote, actually that first book that I wrote, it's called Death Rides the Red, was a story of cowboys and Indians that happened to encounter the werewolves. And one of the people that read it, who likes my story, said, "Could you please write a Western that doesn't have a monster in it?" So that's kind of where that came from. So yeah, it's fun to get away and do different things now and then.
Okay. So your first book came out in 2005. And when you're, from the writing aspect of the podcast, what inspired you to, I've got a story. I think people are going to like it. So I'm going to put it down on paper and go through basically the humiliating process of publishing a book. What inspired you to do that, to actually put it on paper and put yourself out there?
Well, I'd done some creative writing courses, and I thought, well, the instructor was enthusiastic. I thought, well, okay, like I said, I'll try it. I'll put it out there and see what happens with it. And the response was good. I thought so. I let a few people look over that first book as in the writing. Actually, the first thing I set out writing for the public was I thought it was going to be a book. It ended up being a short story that's in one of my books. But while I was doing that, I also got the idea for the first book that I put out.
Mm-hmm. All right. So for people that are listening to the podcast now, can you tell us where you have a website that somebody could look at, or where are your books being offered?
Actually, the books are being published by House of Honor Books, and I'd say right off, I'm a partner in the company. That helps me. But our website, houseofhonorbooks.com. You can see all of our books there. I'm not the only author there, not the only genre there. So maybe that doesn't feel that, there are other things there.
Well, now so that's totally interesting there. Are you guys a cooperative, like a cooperative of authors?
No, we're a partnership. But we have authors that sign on to write with, but they're not. We're trying to form a sort of an author support group on our website. That's still in the process of getting made. So we do some of that, but mostly we're just a partnership, writer and editors.
So Jack, you're a veteran. You're a Vietnam veteran.
I was in Vietnam era. I was never actually in Vietnam. I worked in the Philippines, hauling cargo back and forth. Got stopped on the one time I was on the way to Saigon for the evacuation because they realized I was the last guy on base that could still run C5 engines on the ground. Mm-hmm. They said, "No, you're not going. You're staying here." But I was in during that time, part of Operation Baby Lift and bringing the prisoners back.
Amazing. So, really? So, you brought back, I can't even think of his name. Anyway, yeah, let's not go into that. Okay. But I want to go back into this publishing company. Are these veterans?
I'm the only veteran.
Oh, okay.
The other are women.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm the guy in the group.
Okay. All right. So, because I was thinking, wow, that's a great idea to have a bunch of veterans publishing books together. So, anyway,
that is one thing I'm kind of working on. I'm gathering some stories from veterans around here to kind of just publish remembrances and stories. Got a few that are definitely will make the book.
Okay. Okay. Well, that is very, very interesting. So, the book is Tracks. And we have so much to talk about, Jack, that I want to get right now into the book. Now, you didn't mention a website of your own. That's not out there.
Actually, it's still a Wix website. I haven't put it out there under my name. So yeah, it's just Wix.com, Jack LaFountain. But it is there, and I do blog from there.
Okay, could you say the Wix address again?
It's Wix.com/Jack LaFountain.
Okay, because I'm just like you have to learn all this stuff. I don't know anything about Wix. I started off with a thing called Weebly, and
Right.
I really got suckered into that. I was into that for years, and then suddenly, they just, I don't know what I think, I can't really remember what they did. They started overbilling me or something, this host. And so I ended up doing WordPress. So I had to
Right.
learn all of that. And
Yes.
I didn't get into writing books to learn how to make a website and having to learn all these different systems, but that seems to be what we end up doing, right?
It is. Yeah. I've done a couple of websites, and this one I've done everything but just put my own domain name on it. Like I said, I do blog from there. But having recently got into the publishing business, I found that it's taken up, again, like you said, the whole thing. I've got to learn how to do the website. I've got to learn how to market, which I'm still learning a lot about that. But it finally got to the point now where I'm able to do more writing than I did for the first couple of months getting into that.
Yeah, that's once you start doing you're full-time marketing all the time, and no matter what you do, it has, if you're not marketing the book, then basically you're wasting your time because you need a return on your investment.
Exactly.
So
yeah, as I tell a lot of new writers that I meet, writing is the start of it.
Yep.
Once you get the book written and then you get it edited, you get it published, you still have to market it. Everybody's got to market their book.
Yep, exactly. So let's do some marketing. That's a great little lead into marketing tracks. So let's talk about the premise before we get into the Potlatch, Cushman, Hood Canal area. What's the premise of the book?
The book is basically my own interest in Bigfoot, just collecting stories, reading the story to talk about on tracks. I was really interested in the Native American lore of the area, and that's kind of what guided me to that story. I think the setting it's set in 1919. It's about a veteran coming home and has an encounter with Bigfoot. And I guess the setting kind of came about because I was teaching a class, an online class on World War I at the time. That kind of got that.
Mm-hmm. So he returns home to the Northwest.
Yes. The story that takes place in the Pacific Northwest in tracks is called The Haunted Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's most of the story revolves around the Salish Indian myth. And myth, a lot of people object to my use of the word myth. Myth does not mean untrue. Mm-hmm. Myth means that it is a historical tale told by a people to explain their world. Mm-hmm. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's untrue, and that's the common, modern usage. Myth means it's not true, but that's not so. That's really not. The dictionary doesn't define it that way. So I use the word myth about it, but it is a gathering of the Native American tales, specifically the Skokomish tribe that lived at the mouth of the river there. Their stories, and I kind of took their Native American stories, how they tell how Bigfoot came about, why there even is. Of course, they call it a Seatic. That's their name for it. And so kind of go into their background on it, and then tell a story. Mm-hmm. to kind of illustrate the points of their lore. And in the story, I've kind of woven in some actual encounters that people have told me about. Mm-hmm. There's a story about one of the characters about him being on a camping trip, and he's off on the I think it's Duckabush River at the time, but he's out camping. He's cooking some fish on the fire. He hears some owls going that maybe not quite right. Finally has to leave his campfire because he has to get up and go pee. Well, he does, and he comes back to his fire. Some of the food's gone, and then while he's sitting there, he hears somebody peeing back where he was, and that's actually a story that someone has told me about. And it was carried also on Dick Scripted. But yeah, they were out in the woods camping, and that's what happened to them. And it's somebody's covering up. They're remarking the territory.
Exactly. Wow. So these, how many encounters did you cite in your book about the Potlatch area? How many did you just do the one encounter, or were there a few you kind of blended in?
They're kind of just blended in, and some are not from that area. Some are a couple of them. Little nuances in the story are from friends that I know in Idaho, so from that area. But
okay. And then in the book, you go outside of the Northwest, but you're still encountering, or the reader is still encountering Bigfoot in different parts of the country.
Yes, and most of the places, all but one, are places that I've lived. Like I said, the Hood Canal area. You should travel all up and down there. I was fostered rescue dogs, and we love to take them out anywhere from the Snoqualmie River up to Brennan, all along there. So that's the area I'm familiar with. The second story in the book comes from a town called Sulphur, Oklahoma, where I lived for years. Then the last story in the book comes from northern Alabama, where I'm at now. And both the second and fourth stories are both taken from BFRO reports. Mm-hmm. Those are the basis of the story. I changed the names and a little bit of the setting, and maybe add a little bit to it. But the third one is kind of a unique story, and I do a lot talking in the book about the challenges of writing it. But the third story, I did something different that I wanted to try out, and wasn't sure how it would work, or even if it would work. But the third story is told from Bigfoot's point of view, and it takes place in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Now that is fantastic.
It's about a male Bigfoot trying to get his family through the worst winter ever.
Yeah, I'd like to see somebody, because would you see all these Bigfoot shows, whatever? Nobody ever goes and says, "Well, what is the Bigfoot thinking about these people?" Making
that was a big challenge with writing it. It started out with, because I knew I have to get it past my editor. Does Bigfoot think? Does he reason? Because he's got to really be able to reason to tell this story through his eyes. And I did a lot of research with folks that are Facebook friends on Bigfoot group that I belong to, and a lot of I said, is Bigfoot intelligent? How do you know he's intelligent? And I got a lot of answers that I said, well. I got one fellow said, well, you can look in their eyes and see the intelligence. I thought, well, I've never been that close. Maybe, and I'm not saying it's not true, but I can look at my dog's eyes and see intelligence. Is Bigfoot more intelligent than that? I think so. And that's what I want to share in the story. Finally, what happened, I got a call from a fellow that lives in the Blue Mountain area, Washington, Oregon, Idaho border sort of area, who hunts way back in places where people don't go. And he was on one of the groups, and he said, "Can I call you?" I said, "Sure, call me." And he called me up and told me about a time he had been out. He was out bear hunting in that area, and said there was one, and he's multilingual. And he said he was packing up to leave, and he heard somebody talking behind him. Couple of voices going back and forth, that he said he could recognize that it was language by the syntax and the meter and all that sort of thing, but a language he'd never heard. And he kind of investigated that, and I started from there. Okay, language is thinking out loud, so there's thinking going on. And then I also ran across another story that was told to me about people watching Bigfoot, more than one, in an area where they figured out that they were setting off motion detector lights. And they not only figured out that they were causing it, but they figured out where they stood to turn the lights on, and they put out sticks to mark the boundaries of the light. You know, if you go past here, the lights are going to come on. Yeah, that's intelligent thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, just to add to that story, it's kind of an aside, but I interviewed this couple a couple months ago. They were down at Skinwalker Ranch, and they came away with a story of a guy who, I think they were staying with him, and he had a motor home with the motion detector lights. He just put them up, and they came up. 3 of them came out and tore them down.
yeah.
Just appeared out of nowhere, tore them down, and were gone.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, the other problem, the second really problem I went, they have speech, they have language, they think. What does Bigfoot say? I mean, there's no Bigfoot English dictionary around to consult. You know, what does Bigfoot call a house? What does he call people? What does he call a cow?
mm-hmm.
And that was I decided I wasn't going to do like Tolkien with his Lord of the Rings thing and invent a whole language, even though I hope to use the idea again. But I think what my editor and I came up with as far as that works pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you're in the Encounters USA world. We've got Tom Cantrell, who talks about phonetics, the not phonetics, but the glyphs, that they have an alphabet, et cetera, et cetera. So, you're not too far off base with what I've already heard that people kind of accept. So
yeah, one of sorry.
No, you go ahead.
One of the things the Salish people there in the Pacific Northwest, the different tribes, part of their legend is that the Siatik can speak all of their languages, and understand all the languages and the variations in that area.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, in your book, how much of what's the line between reality and fiction? Can we see that, or is it just so blended in that the story you just can't tell?
I hope you can't see it.
Okay,
that's the goal. But I tell people I'm more of a big track lover and enthusiast than an expert. So, probably, somebody who's really an expert on it, the fiction might show through. But I think for the most part, it doesn't. That's the goal. And one of the reasons that I got into writing the fictionalized, I call it fictionalized version. It is based on true events, but it's fictionalized. Was the problem that I had with I listened to a lot of Bigfoot podcasts, a lot of stories, and the problem as a writer that I always had with it was they all sound like court testimony. The facts, just fact, which in a way they are, and that's what they're meant to be. But that's where the writer in me comes out, is that, I've not had a face-to-face encounter. And so when I hear that, it doesn't give me that gut feeling. It doesn't put me there. Yeah. And as I thought about it, it's because one of the difference thing that sets writers apart is whether they're telling the story or they're showing you the story. And most Bigfoot stories that you hear on the podcast, they're telling their story. They want to bring the facts and tell you what happened. But with tracks, what I set out to do was show the story. I want to put you in the sort of in the driver's seat, so that you see the story as it goes. You feel what the character is feeling, and hopefully come away with maybe a bit more entertaining experience, and hopefully a little more real experience. I know I've had one lady that read the book said, I used to kind of think it might be true, but now I'm sure.
Great. Okay, let's start with this question. it's kind of burning in the back of my mind. So in tracks, is Bigfoot, like, I don't know how to even pronounce it. It's French, the Duke's ex machina, is it like the gods coming, intervening to solve a problem for somebody? What happens because of the interaction? Is a problem solved, or are they just different circumstances throughout the book? Hey, everybody, let's take a quick break here and talk about what you're going to be wearing when you're on the lookout this summer for the paranormal. You want to look your best when you're on the lookout, and you can only do it in Heinessight and Books in Heinessight and Encounters USA apparel. That's right. You can get them all at encountersusa.com, booksinhindsight.com, and of course, hindsight.com, the home of author Matthew Hines. Now, check out these great fashions, and let's get back to another great author.
In the Pacific Northwest story, the Haunted Warrior story, Bigfoot is actually the problem. He turns out to be the problem in the story. But then again, the problem turns out to be a solution. Not by Bigfoot's doing, it's simply by the encounter and what happens to the person, involved in the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the case. In the second and last stories, Bigfoot's not really, a solution to a problem. He sort of shows up and brings people together,
Mm-hmm.
in their belief and the shared experience.
Mm-hmm. And so are all of these there? I mean, like you were talking about myth earlier, and I kept thinking, well, now what is the difference between myth and legend? And are we talking, when we're talking about the different stories in your book, your Bigfoot accounts are based on reality. What about the human side? Any reality in those, or are those? Oh, I guess you talked about you taught World War I classes, so that's kind of based on reality, I suppose. What about
that and a little bit other is that I have the Native Americans in the first and then in the third story, and my history is kind of with a lot of Native Americans. I was years ago married to a Native American woman. Kids are about a quarter Native American, Chickasaw Indian. They're looking at Bigfoot also as in the second story. As a matter of fact, it takes place in Oklahoma. So, I think that that's a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is your? Are you going to continue to write about Bigfoot, or are you going to expand into other areas? And going back to that Western, was your werewolf, was that a dogman or a werewolf?
It was a werewolf.
Okay.
Probably the best-selling book that I have is one. It's called BAYOU Moon, which takes place in the bayous of Louisiana, of course, and it's a rougarou, which I tell people that don't know, it's a Cajun spice werewolf.
Uh-huh.
The legends are a little bit different, and I was on Dogman Encounter to talk about the difference between them. But the legends are a little bit different, but sort of the effects are the same. And so I do that one. I am planning to do more Bigfoot stories. I've been collecting a few. I've got one that for sure I'll do. I have some friends who are paranormal investigators in Southern Ohio who basically are more ghost oriented, I think. But they went out one night to investigate a haunted cemetery near them and ran into a couple of Bigfoot in the process. They said they'd never really thought about him, and they went out that night and they were around the cemetery.
Well, how about that? So one thing that I try to keep track of on when I do interviews with people is, so you've seen Bigfoot in Alabama, you've seen it in Oklahoma, you've seen it in the Northwest. I guess you've seen it in Ohio, from these people.
Mm-hmm.
What's the physical differences between a Northwest Sasquatch and an Alabama Sasquatch?
Not the only thing, but the thing that I picked up most of all about the difference was mostly just color.
Mm-hmm.
The Pacific Northwest ones seemed to be a darker color than the one that was reported on here.
Okay. What about temperament? Do you find in all these stories, is there a difference in temperament between West and East Coast Sasquatch?
I heard there was, and when I started out to write the fourth story in this book, I wanted to write a story about an aggressive Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to actually researching a lot of it, there's not a lot of that. Probably, and my take on it is probably because Bigfoot will demonstrate and we run.
Mm-hmm.
And so avoid a lot of the encounters. That's not always the case. I was reading a story about a Bigfoot in Oklahoma, or they were multiple Bigfoots that were bothering these people that lived in sort of very rural southeastern Oklahoma. And the Bigfoot were coming around. They started out sort of on the periphery of the woods, and they kept coming closer and closer to the point they were stealing deer meat out of their freezer that was outside.
Mm-hmm.
They would shoot at them and they would go away, but they didn't go far away. And they actually called the BFRO in to investigate that. And their thought was that the Bigfoot had learned that these people were deer hunting in their yard, mm-hmm. and shots meant there was a dead deer. Mm-hmm. And so that actually brought them in rather than chase them away. Mm-hmm. I think, of course, in the fourth story in this book, I also include some parts of Teddy Roosevelt's Bigfoot story, which is one of an aggressive Bigfoot where somebody actually dies. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of it, I didn't find a lot of that again because people retreat before it escalates to that point.
Yeah. There was the, when you're talking about the aggressive Bigfoot, in the 411 movie, they talked about the guy up in Montana in the, I can't, Spirit Mountains or something, strange mystery mountains or something. And I can't remember the guy's name. But the guy was carrying a rifle and parts of his gear were found in different places. And I just really wonder if he, was not the victim of, or he demonstrated something that maybe the Bigfoot didn't like. And I think that in some cases like his and in the Crater Lake incident, that where they found the guy 14 miles away, or just his bones, probably Bigfoot. I mean, what else can move something that far, that fast, in that kind of area? So,
I think so. I think given the opportunity, the people don't back down, they would be aggressive, and we're certainly be no match for them. I don't think. Certainly not physically. Now with a gun, that might be an equalizer. But I think for the most part, like I said, we retreat, and I had an experience like that. I was out hunting actually with a friend, and it was getting towards the evening, and we were headed in, and suddenly we just got this creepy feeling that we're being watched and close up by something bad. There were bear in the area. We weren't afraid of bear. We were armed well enough to handle any bear that came along. But we beat it out of there in a hurry. So kind of avoided that kind of.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, so your book came out in, I believe it's March 22nd.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and how are the sales? How are we doing?
Good, good. Yeah, I'm pleased with it. I've floated the Pacific Northwest story here. I went to the Washita Bigfoot Festival in Mena, Arkansas, back at the end of September, and we put out just this first story in a little book because honestly, I was concerned about putting it out that Bigfoot people are not going to like this because it's fiction. It's fiction. I don't want to read it. I'm not going to buy that. So we made this one story and took it to the Bigfoot Festival, and it did well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we thought, well, okay, we'll go with the whole book.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a fantastic idea because, like you say, you've got your encounters, and they sound like police reports, but nobody tries to fill in the gaps. And especially I love the idea of going into the mind of the Bigfoot, because that's a book that I would like to write is, what do these Bigfoot think of these people coming into the woods looking for them?
Yeah.
And, an example is think of the Native Americans when the whites would come out and try to make battle against him. And they were going, what are these? These are like kids with guns, and they don't even know what they're doing. And they just kind of ran circles around him. And so think of something that is much more athletic, probably much smarter, and living in very dense air in a very dense area, and they own it. That's their territory. So I would like to really, see somebody write like what you're doing, this fictionalized as close as possible. And that's what I really like about your book, Jack, is that you really researched, you really looked into as much factual evidence as possible and then mixed it in. So I think that's top notch. And I really can't wait. To confess, I haven't had a time to read the book, but I'm going to order it and check it out because I'm really excited. And also I'm excited about this Cushman aspect. So just to help me out, did you have any, do you have any knowledge of Bigfoot encounters at Lake Cushman?
Not specifically like Cushman. Like I said, I was actually back in that area in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I went with some friends from Idaho. They asked me where I lived when I was in Washington. I told them, well, I live right across the sound from Hartstein Island. Oh, there are encounters there. Well, yeah, there are. I didn't know it at the time. And they said, how you've lived all these places, and all these places are hotspots for big. Yeah. How come you haven't seen one yet? So
yeah,
I don't know, but let's go hunting. So in the fall 2019, we went out to Hartstein Island. We went to Hoodsport. We went up to Brennan and all, and out in the wilderness a bit from those looking, but no encounters. But we went.
Yeah. So have you seen my Rich Germeau videos? And I mean, that's where Encounters USA was born, was on Hartstein Island.
Oh, yeah.
That's our first.
I haven't seen that one. I've watched a couple, but I haven't seen that.
Oh, do you know about Rich Germeau?
No. Yeah.
Well, you've got to do your homework, young man. Yeah, because Rich on Hartstein Island, I don't even know these people.
Did he used to be a deputy sheriff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I had forgotten the name, but yes, yeah. I have. Yeah. I've listened to some of his stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I went and tracked him down. And then because the first show I did, one of the first ones, is I went to where he described his encounter. So I tried to, based on where he said it was, I tried to find it. I was pretty close. I was within like 40 or 50 yards, but he finally took me out there. And then we went to Lake Cushman. And I mean, this might be something that you'll be interested in, because what I'm doing is I've got, basically it's great that I have you, because you've kind of, piqued the interest. But, I've got Rich's encounter, and he took me to a guy's property at Lake Cushman. And the guy who owned the property came out and said, I'm the guy who owned the property. And there's a lot more that went on there than just Rich, what Rich was doing. And he said there's UFO activity out there. There's a lot more Bigfoot interactions. But he decided at the last minute, I was going to interview him like today. And he said, I'm going to write a book. And so I can't interview until after the book comes out. So so luckily you came on, you've already got a book. So what luck, how nice it worked out.
Yeah. I did the same as you. I went out to Heinessight Island from the story that I heard, trying to find exactly where he was at. Yeah. And get out to that same place. Yeah. Yeah. But Lake Cushman should be, I no surprise there that, be lots of activity going on.
Yeah. So I have this guy, I have Rich, and there's also Derek Randalls, who is part of the Olympic project, like searching for Bigfoot. And he had an encounter at the top of the staircase. So you cannot tell me that there are not, or at least have been, Sasquatch in those area. And, from these guys over at this Cushman property, there wasn't one, it was a clan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So mom.
I lived for a while at Lake Limerick, which is not far from Heinessight Island, across the water. And had where people tell me later, I didn't know at the time, that's Bigfoot. I had this 90-pound husky who was my dog, and we went out walking every morning, and we walked down the same trail every morning, every evening. We went out one morning, we got to the head of the trail, and that big old dog tucked his tail and turned around and refused to go into that area for 3 days. Wow. And I had searched the area, anybody seen any bears, any mountain lions, anything like that in the area? Nobody had seen any. Finally, one friend said, there's probably Bigfoot there. That's the area. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And you lived in Gig Harbor, where there was also another pretty famous sighting. So yeah, amazing, Jack. And did when you moved down to Alabama, did you say, "Oh, wait a minute, I need to be back up there"?
Yeah, kind of. I had 3 stories in the book done when I moved here. I came originally to do an open mic event with the publisher that I was working with, and did. And then I ended up staying. I kind of thought, well, there won't be much here. And then I got to looking through the BFRO reports, and there are a lot of them here, and one very close by here. One I actually picked for the book took place about 30 miles from where I'm at right now. So an interesting story. They have, and the area is unique. And actually, the encounter that I talked about in the book is not this one, but in Coleman County, Alabama, there is a lot of talk around about multiple sightings of a white Bigfoot.
Of a what?
Of a white Bigfoot.
Really?
Yeah. And that's the one people ask you about if you go down there talking about Bigfoot with people. They talk about the white one, which I didn't learn about until after I'd already done the story. So I don't know. Maybe this one would be for a later book.
That's interesting. I wonder why it would be white. So odd. Yeah. All right. Well, Jack, I can't, let me look at the time here. I have my glasses on, so I can't see, but I don't want to keep you all day. I'm sure you've got other things to do. We've got a few minutes left. So let's talk about your future plans. Are you going to do another book like Tracks, or are you going to take it into a new tangent?
Actually, what I'm thinking, I'm kind of torn between doing one or two. I do want to do some more Bigfoot stories, definitely. But I've run into people telling me, well, I've got this story. And so I'm thinking about doing one, which coincidentally is I'm looking along the lines of Encounters for the title. because I want to do some Bigfoot encounters. I've got, like I said, I've got the paranormal investigators who told me one. I've got a story about a guy who pastors a church that ran into demonic spirits within the church. Sort of a face-to-face confrontation. I've got one of a fellow that was awakened in the middle of the night after a bunch of strange things went on in his house. Somebody, breathing in his face and then yelling, "Wake up!" and chasing his family out of the house.
Wow.
Some different things. Also, a couple of strange military-connected stories.
All right. Well, so are these going to be like just one chapter, little stories, like a?
Probably a larger stories like tracks.
Okay.
A couple of the stories in there are longer. They're not big enough to be a book, although I've had people say, that should have been a book. You shouldn't have stopped with the short story, which I don't know that I agree with. I think the story was done, but the fact that they want more is always a good thing to hear. But I do that. I am planning to. I've got a couple of sequels that I promised to write. Mm-hmm. One is that Rougarou book. I'm doing a sequel to it, and then to the Western as well. But then, I do readings at open mic. Planning on this year, and looks like mostly it's going to be in the fall, is hitting about every Bigfoot festival that I can think of, or that I can get to.
All right. Well, then I have to ask you, because I think the big one out here, the only one I've heard of so far, is the Medellin Falls. You plan on making
that one?
Yeah. Any plans to make it out here for that?
I don't know if I'll be able to make it out for that one. Although I'm still working on it. I'm looking forward to hearing too if they're going to do the International Bigfoot Conference this year. They canceled it last year, which usually is in the Tri-Cities area.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they'll do that one, and I'd like to come for that one. What's that?
There's I think the Yakima. They were the Yakima Bigfoot Festival. That was a big one that I was going to go to, but that got canceled. So,
I hope to go back to the Ouachita one. There's another one in Oklahoma the first weekend of October that I want to make. Another one in South Carolina. I have one in Lakeland, Florida that's happening soon, but I'm not going to make it to that one. But
yeah. Wow, that's great. So you go and you sell your books there, and that is great.
Do a little research and gather stories while I'm at it.
Well, that is fantastic. So, are we going to see you back up here? Are you completely located in Alabama now, or any plans on coming back to the Northwest?
I'm kind of completely here now, but like I said, hopefully travel's up there. I definitely want to. I love the area, so I'd love to get back there.
Yeah, I never. I grew up here, so I never realized how great it was, because I thought every place was like this. But it's it's really nice to get over onto the peninsula, and you can go out and not see a soul, and if you go far enough west, and it's nice to still have that, at least for a little while. Mm-hmm. So, Jack, what do you think are what are the implications for the long term for like Bigfoot? I almost want to say, do you think that if it's discovered, what's that gonna do to like the whole topic? What's it gonna do to people like me and you if Bigfoot becomes discovered?
Well, that's I'm not sure. I've heard it said that discovery is being opposed by some. Well, that government agencies don't want to recognize that it exists, because then they would be responsible for protecting it, which has all kinds of ramifications, economic and community ones. But I think that probably eventually it will be proved to everybody's satisfaction. Although that's. I heard a fellow talking about ghosts one time. He's a scientist. Said, people that believe in ghosts see ghosts everywhere, and I don't see any ghosts. But I thought, well, the other's true too. If you don't believe in them, it can be right in front of you, and you're not going to see it. There is that, I think, too. Some of the things that I've read, I'm wondering if there, maybe a dead body might be the only evidence that some people would believe. And then maybe even then not. So, no, it's a person or this or that.
Yeah, it's another alien hoax.
Yeah.
On Fox.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great answer, because it's a really difficult question, and I really think that we are getting close. I think that within a few years, unless the powers that be just with the way they control the media, they can pretty much say black is white and white is black, and that's just how it is. And anybody who says otherwise gets censored. So
exactly. Yeah. I was a nurse for about 25 years, and a couple of years ago, I heard Jeff Meldrum speak at the Bigfoot conference up there in Idaho Falls, and just the anatomical stuff he was talking about. I said, yeah, exactly. That's, you can tell this is no person. This is something else.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jack, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast, everybody. This is Jack LaFountain. He's down in Alabama. And I guess that makes you are you a Crimson Tide person?
Well, sort of.
It's a purple. Are you is that what college is that?
Oh, no, not LSU. Oh. This is my Bigfoot saw me, but nobody believes him shirt.
Oh, okay.
No, I actually, I don't let it get out around here too much, but I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, that's probably fighting words down there.
Yeah, they played this last year, and I went looking around for a Notre Dame T-shirt to wear, and I couldn't find one anywhere.
Yeah, not even going to get into that. So
no,
better move back over that Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jack LaFountain, it has really been an honor to talk about your book, Tracks. And please, everybody, Jack has a number of really interesting books. As we've talked about just a few of them on the podcast, but you got like 6 or 7 books, right? Okay. And they all look good. So, so I want to thank Jack for being on the podcast. Jack, do you have any parting words for our listeners or viewers?
No, just hope you get out and get outside, take a look around and see what's there. You might be surprised.
Great. That is fantastic advice. All right, everybody. So this has been a special Encounters USA and Books in Hindsight podcast, and we have been honored to have Mr. Jack LaFountain, author, on our show. So for everybody on Books in Hindsight, I just want to remind you, keep on reading. And for everybody watching on Encounters USA, always watch your back. Matthew Hines here. Just want to remind you, if you like this kind of content, subscribe to this channel, whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Also, go to encountersusa.com for more videos and podcasts, all archived for your convenience. Also, we have a wonderful Encounters USA blog, as well as an Encounters USA paranormal shop for all of your paranormal apparel. So, not only can you watch your back, you can put some of our designs on yours as well. So we'll see you on down the road on Encounters USA.